Call me crazy, but I'm testing this mic right now. I don't want to be looking crazy later. right, enough of that music. All right, good evening, folks. This is the 816 Fix with Darian Gray. As usual, I got to tell you a little bit about my day. And before I even get started talking, I think it's important that I make sure to let folks know that my promise to anybody who chooses to watch me is that I'm going to share my life. I'm going to share my life. There may be some parts of it that I choose to keep private, but the majority of it, I'm probably going to be sharing. It's the best way for me to deliver these messages. As a business owner of several different businesses, the day in and day out stuff that I have to deal with is constant. Some of it is wonderful and some of it is just flat out unacceptable, for lack of better words. Okay, so today, and actually yesterday as well, I've been spending practically the entire day doing work that isn't mine. I'm doing somebody else's work, basically. I won't go too far into the details of it, but I'll say this: if you're one of the people out there who really have an interest in improving yourself and improving your life, make absolutely sure that you understand what it means to sacrifice one thing for something else. You got to make sure that you understand it. You know, we're only given about 16 active hours per day. That's what the average is. Most of us are active for about 16 to 17 hours a day. And then, of course, that last few hours is going to be used for sleep, recharging the batteries. And across that 16 hours in the day, 16 to 17 hours in a day, it should be, most of us have a pretty normal routine that we kind of go through. If you are a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 type or somewhere along those lines, generally what we do is we wake up in the morning, take care of personal hygiene. If you're smart, you try to get some breakfast in, you drink your coffee, whatever it is you do. You take off and you go to work. You do your work day. For some of us, we may work 2 jobs, across that 16 hours. When it's done, you get back home and it's over. So that means that normally for a lot of us, when it comes to special new activities, we got to find a way. You're going to have to put one thing aside in order to be able to deal with that new thing. Say if it's a new relationship or whatever the case may be. If it's a new relationship, you're going to have to carve out some time in your life in order to make that new relationship pop. If you can't find a way to sacrifice something, if you can't give up one thing, or part of one thing at least, to deal with the new thing, nothing happens. You're basically stuck in the same place. And as I said, telling you a little bit about my day, honestly, what's going on is I'm dealing with a new business, and as I'm dealing with this new business, what I'm realizing is some of the folks that I'm working with, they don't have that same level of dedication. They're not willing to give up what they had before for what they're trying to do now. And there's 1,000,001 excuses as to why somebody wouldn't want to make changes to their current life to move along to a new life. And here's what I'm getting from it. Everybody wants some kind of a good outcome in life. At least most of us do. We want some kind of a good outcome in life. And we see where we are today, and we look a little bit further ahead, and it's like, well, I really would like to be able to do that. And in this particular case, it's a new business. Well, guess what? If your 16 hours are used up dealing with whatever your normal life is, and you're not willing to give up any part of that, there's no way that you'll be able to dedicate your life to a new business. I mean, a new business is just like a new baby. It's like a new baby, okay? Once that new business gets started, tons of time and attention have to be dedicated to that new business, because there's so much that has to be done. There's so much development that has to take place. Right? And this development takes place even before you ever make a dime. Before you ever make a dime in this new business, you'll probably have to deal with learning new systems. You'll have to deal with all of your documents. Business is completely centered around documentation. If you don't know how to sell the business, you're gonna have to learn how to sell. You're gonna have to learn customer service if you're not, say, proficient at that already. You should be if you're starting a new business, but you're gonna have to learn customer service. Hell, when I first got started, I had to learn Microsoft Office products, Adobe products. There's a payroll and accounting suite that I use. I had to learn the ins and outs of that. You name it. All right. And this is, again, before you ever make a dime, before you ever start talking to people, the people that are going to give you those dimes. Okay. So the bulk of my day was spent doing somebody else's work, and that somebody else had to hear, they kind of got a tongue lashing from me today about sacrifice. I think it's absolutely important that anybody who's learning to do anything new, they have to have a clear understanding, especially if you're working with other people. And let's say that I already have made my sacrifices and I'm continuing to make more sacrifices. This particular, whoever it is that you're working with, and it's clear that they're not making the sacrifices, something's got to give. So before I go rolling too far into that, I want to get into today's title, which is driving lessons. Driving lessons. So in the description, what I said is there's levels to everything, and you got to learn, or you shouldn't drive fast until you learn to drive slow. That's what it says in the description. So I want to break this down a little bit. Sometimes people need to learn to shut up and just learn the lessons. Okay? If you're too young, and that usually means that you don't have the experience. Not all the time, but if you're too young, that means you don't have the experience. And if you're old, but you ain't never left the block, then that usually means as well that you just don't have the experience. My mother started giving me driving lessons when I was 15 years old. It was before I even got my driver's permit, but I was 15 years old. She started giving me driver's lessons. And we started out in the church parking lot. Okay. I was just learning how to accelerate and brake, and learning how to park within the lines of the parking space. And back then, the vehicles were very different from what they are today. A lot less technologically advanced, and the vehicles were larger and wider. And a lot of them had these big emblems, which you can still see. I'm trying to think about it. Yeah, depending on how much money you're spending on a car. Like the more expensive cars, they still tend to put this large emblem right there in the front, just over the grill. And at some point, you know, I was able to kind of graduate from just driving in the parking lot to actually getting on the street. My Uncle Richard let me drive his car one time. Of course, he's sitting right there in the passenger seat. He needs to see how well I drive. And he noticed that my judgment was off. So what he taught me was, if you pay attention to the yellow line on the left side or the driver's side of the road, and then you're looking at the dotted white line or the other line on the other side of the road, wherever you are, in order to make sure that your car gets in its lane and you stay in your lane, you got to line up the front driver's side edge of the car with this line and the emblem with the line in the middle. And what this will do is it'll keep you centered, or right directly in the center of the lane. Something that I just flat out didn't know, something that my mother did not teach me while I was driving her car in the parking lots. So anyways, a few months go by and I get my driver's permit, and my mother now, she feels comfortable with me driving to the bus stop. It was only a few blocks away from the house, but she felt comfortable with letting me do a little bit more moving. She let me drive them a few blocks away to the bus stop, and it got me out of the parking lot and on the streets. About a month after that, I was actually allowed to go a lot further. I was allowed to go even further than the bus stop anyways. I was allowed to drive us to church. And of course, she's sitting there, and she's a nervous wreck in that passenger seat, but now I'm driving to church. There was no highway driving. I mean, from the house to the church could have been 6 or 7 miles roughly. And she would let me take that drive, and she was screaming at me, and all I could do is accept what it is she had to say. I had to shut my mouth and not argue, let the teacher do the teaching, right? And even though I didn't like it, I didn't like how it felt, the truth is though, even after after a few months, I don't have the experience. I don't know what it is I'm doing exactly. I kind of know, and I guess I'm good enough to get from, say, one location to the next, even if it's 5 or 6 miles. But let's face it, a few months in, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Not really. And I probably would hurt or kill myself if she wasn't sitting there doing all of the yelling that she was doing. So anyways, a few months down the line, 16th birthday hits, and I go out a few days after that 16th birthday. I go get my driver's license, and on that driver's license, which by the way, back then I was not about doing the work, okay? So I did not read that driver's license book until I failed the driver's license test, the written test, 3 times. Failed it 3 times, and then I realized, okay, there's some specific information in here that they're asking about on the test, and I don't know it. I'll ask you weird questions like, how heavy does a baby, or how large or how heavy does a baby have to be before they can get out of the car seat, or not ride, or ride in the car without a car seat. Just various different, really specific questions that if you don't read it, you just ain't gonna know. So anyways, I passed the driving part of the driving test, no problem. But one infraction, which was parallel parking. So I wasn't the best at parallel parking. I kind of blew that part. But a few months later, there's a lady at the church named Darlene Ford. I hope she sees this video one of these days, but she wanted to see if I could, how well I could drive. And she let me drive around the block and, a few blocks over, whatever. And by now I'm good with that. I mean, I got a driver's license. And then when we got back to the church, got back in front of the church, and the only parking space that was available was in between two other cars. And she said, okay, well, let's get parked so we can get back in the building. I said, Miss Ford, I don't know how to parallel park. I didn't pass that part on my driver's test. She's like, you mean tell me nobody taught you how to parallel park? And I was like, no, ma'am, nobody taught me how to parallel park. So she showed me. She said, all you got to do is cut the wheel as far as it'll go. You start going into reverse. And your car hits 45 degrees. You start cutting the wheel back to the other direction, to the side, to the driver's side direction. You ease on in, and as you get in there, you start to straighten out the car. And just like that, I knew how to parallel park. But it took somebody, this is probably third or fourth person, who's allowed me to sit in the driver's seat of their car. It took somebody who recognized that, oh, there's something that he doesn't know, let me teach him, right? And again, staying with the point here tonight, I had to shut my mouth and allow this lesson to take place, because it was something else that I didn't know. I'm in the car, right? Before this parallel parking lesson, I'm in the car and I'm having fun. I'm enjoying being on the streets, but there's still things that I just flat out don't know. I don't know it, because there's levels to everything, right? Moving on. So now I got my driver's license and I've had it for a few months, and you know, I'm in high school, 16 years old, and I want to go and have fun. I want to get out and do some things. And I asked my mom if she let me drive her car. At the time, it was a Jeep Cherokee. If she let me drive her car to go to the school's football games on Fridays. And she said, okay. So we sit there. I didn't have money. And in order to get the money, she'd probably hate me for telling this, but I would sit there, my mother, her friend, and my grandmother, we would play Tonk for quarters. And this is literally, I was so risky back then even as a young gambler, and I feel crazy saying that I was gambling with my mom, but we would play Tonk for quarters. I would make my $10 and it's time to go. Back then, gasoline was a whole lot cheaper. Probably get it for like $1 or so a gallon. Toss in a few gallons, I'm rolling all night. So now she's trusting me, right? The trust level has developed. She's letting me go out on my own, unsupervised, and I can do my thing. And as long as I don't get tickets, and as long as I'm not having car accidents, she's good, right? Levels. I went from wherever I was driving in the parking lot to, you know, now I'm actually able to get out and go to the high school football game on my own. Levels to it. It only took a few months, maybe up to close to a year, but I got there, right? By the age 17, I thought that I was a seasoned veteran on the streets. And for any parent who might watch this video, you know exactly what it is I'm saying, okay? Young teenagers, 16, 17, 18 years old, you know, and even older than that, they tend to think that they know it all by the age 17 or as a young teenager. And in many cases, it's hard for them to shut up and accept the lesson because they think they know more. They think they know better. So anyways, I'm out there on the streets, and I'm allowed to use my mother's car, my grandmother's car, my uncle's cars. I could go anywhere I wanted to, do whatever I wanted to, because at this point I'm unsupervised. I can do my thing. Folks are trusting me. So one day I was invited to hang out with a friend of mine named Mike. And in order to meet up with him, I had to go to his mother's place. And so they lived in South Kansas City. Now, today it's nothing to it. But back then, for me to get to South Kansas City, at least the part of town that they were on, It was more like the east side of South Kansas City. I had to use a highway that I had never used before, I-470. So I get on the highway. I'm out there moving, and I'm on 470, and I'm seeing these exits with these street names that I recognize, but I was scared as hell. I'm worried about which exit I should take. Even though I recognize these names, I don't know where I'm going to be once I get off on that particular exit. Am I supposed to turn left? Am I supposed to turn right? No clue, right? Eventually I made it to my friend's house, but the point is, now I'm out here and I'm exploring new ground, right? It's like foreign land almost, right? And I think that a lot of us would be able to attest to this. Like once you get out there and you're driving on your own, blocks that you've and blocks and streets and highways that you've been on before, all of a sudden it feels brand new because you were not the one driving, you were riding. You're on somebody else's back and you're not getting the experience. You're actually just along for the ride. In most cases, you're probably not even paying attention. Back then, while there were no cell phones, I probably was, kind of leaned back in the seat or singing and clapping to whatever song, might have been on the radio and just kind of goofing off. But now I'm driving and it feels like foreign land. So, like I said, eventually I made it to my friend's house and, I was good. Back then also there was no GPS, right? So maybe the government had access to GPS, but as far as, the common citizen, we didn't have GPS units back then. We're talking mid to late 90s, okay? Talking mid to late 90s. We didn't have all of the GPSs and the cell phones. Well, there were cell phones back then, but they weighed about 3 pounds and had to be carried in a bag. The personal handheld cell phone didn't make it mainstream until, I want to say it was like 98 or 99. So it ain't been around all that long, but nonetheless, we didn't have those GPS units and all of this in our car. So you were basically stuck with using a map or prior knowledge. It's one or the other back then. Is you use a map or prior knowledge. And if you had prior knowledge, then you could go wherever you wanted as long as you kind of knew the area and you've been down that road before. Wasn't a big deal, right? Or you had to map things out. Take your pick. So the point that I'm getting at with that is, again, experience. So as time went on and you continued to drive from place to place, maybe you got a job, maybe you finally decided I feel comfortable enough with driving out of town. I can remember that. The first time that I drove to St. Joseph, Missouri. It's only about a 45-minute run from Kansas City, but I've never driven to St. Joseph and I've never driven for 45 minutes. So for me to get from one place to the next, no GPS, and in this particular case, no map, I'm just kind of going. Somebody told me all you got to do is jump on this particular highway and stay on it. I think it's 35 or 29, one of those. You get on this particular highway and you stay on it until you see the Frederick exit or whatever it's called, and you get off there and you make a left. So that's what I did. And for that whole 45 minutes, I'm looking for that particular exit. Once I got past North Kansas City, I didn't know exactly where I was or what I was doing. All I was doing was watching the clocks and the miles, or the clock and the miles, and hoping I landed in the right spot, which I did. Eventually I got there, but again, it was all based on experience. For clarification on this, your age does not determine your level. And a lot of people who, it's like the older we get, we think that, that automatically means the better we are. And that's just not the truth. If you're 50 years old and you've never driven a car, then you shouldn't just get behind the wheel and jump on the highway during rush hour traffic. Chances are, as I said before, you're gonna kill or hurt yourself or somebody else. You just flat out don't have that experience. And then another thing that a lot of people don't seem to understand is that with experience comes knowledge. And knowledge, experience, development, and abilities are what determine your level. Let me say it again. Knowledge, experience, development, and abilities are what determine your level. All right? Just because you shoot a game of pool, which I'm gonna talk about that because here tonight, I'll definitely be. Give me 1 second, y'all. Let me see. Oh. Okay. So anyways, I'm gonna talk about that a little bit too. So just because you shoot a game of pool, that don't make you a shark. All right. Now I can bring up the pool game because I shoot pool, 8 ball. And if you ever see me on a pool table and feel like getting dusted, feel free. Join in, okay? But a few games don't make you a shark. Right? It takes years of learning in order to master something as simple as shooting straight, English, kick shots, bank shots, carom shots, speed control, cue ball control, etc. Some of us even know the difference between a fast cloth and a slow cloth and the effect that it's going to have on our game. Some of us can look at a table and tell that it's off, right? But you'll get these rookies that walk up and they think that they can get on the table and take out a veteran, And honestly, I consider myself an average pool shooter. I'm probably well above average, but in my mind, I consider myself an average pool shooter because I have seen, some folks out here who play the game, masterfully, and I know that I couldn't touch them. But I also know that the majority of people can't touch me. So I'm done tooting my horn about pool, but I'm gonna talk a little bit more on it anyways. If you come into a place where people are hanging around a pool table and you're a rookie at it, then you gotta expect to lose. It's just kind of how it is. If you get lucky and win a game, chances are you won that game because the person that you're shooting against either didn't care, they wasn't worried about winning, or they made some kind of a careless mistake that actually caused them to lose the game as opposed to you winning it. Right? You didn't actually beat that person. You just got lucky because that person beat themselves. And if you're a rookie at it, you should automatically expect to lose. You should expect to make plenty of mistakes. You should expect to get laughed at. You should expect to be outsmarted. And you should expect to be outclassed every time that you touch that table until you get the experience. Once you get the experience, that means that along the way you've developed your skills, you've developed your knowledge of the pool table, you've developed your abilities. So the main point of what it is I'm trying to get at tonight, right, is if you walk up, if you go up against somebody who has 25 years experience, and let's say if we're talking about pool, this person might have tens of thousands of games up on you and you just got started, shut up. Don't come in talking crazy because you don't really have it. You don't have it, and the veteran knows you don't have it. Don't come in talking like you got it, thinking like you got it. All right? Because The only thing that's going to happen is you're going to have to learn that lesson. And it's better to learn those lessons in silence. All right? I'm tying all of this back to just basically to experience. Experience, knowledge, development, and abilities. Okay? All of us want to do something in this world. And all of us actually probably do something in this world. What you have to do in order to improve your level, I don't care if we're talking about relationships and men and how they treat women, or women and how they treat men. I don't care if we're talking about shooting pool or driving. I don't care what it is. In order for you to improve, chances are you need to shut up and accept the lesson. All right? And as you get those lessons, just accept the fact that it's going to take you a long time before you can ever be as good as the teacher. Hear that again. It's going to take you a long time before you can ever be as good as the teacher. Unless you're some savant or you know, some genius level youngster that's fully capable of catching on and mastering things extra fast, which is probably probably accounts for 0.000001% of all people. Unless you're one of those, shut up and accept the lesson. All right. One of the things that I've been dealing with a whole lot lately, and the reason that I'm even talking on this subject tonight, first of all, young folks who think they're smarter. Okay. And then inexperienced folks who think they're better. It's so annoying. One of the worst things that somebody with no experience should be doing out here, or could do out here, is to go talking to the person who has the experience, trying to tell him what to do. That's what I've been dealing with. People who's still in the mud, basically. People who are still in the mud, trying to tell me, reaching up, right, in the trees, trying to tell me what to do, how to do. You ain't done nothing, right? You haven't done anything. There's a young person that's extremely close to me, and I'm not going to say who this person is, but a young person who's extremely close to me, constantly arguing, constantly bucking, swears that they know more, right? And actually, it's kind of a reverse thing. It's like this person claims that they understand that I know more. They claim that they understand that I have the experience, that I have the knowledge, right? But in the same breath, will say anything that they can to rebut whatever it is I'm trying to teach. And it's a shame that it goes that way, but I'm pretty sure, again, anybody who's watching this video who tries to teach anything to anybody has felt this particular effect, especially when it comes to dealing with young folks. But it don't just come from dealing with young folks, right? Sometimes even when dealing with older folks, they struggle to humble themselves enough and just accept the fact that maybe they just don't know. And in essence, you end up running into the exact same issue. Shut up. Learn the lesson. All right. Instead of trying to tell somebody what to do, maybe you need to ask what to do. Ask how to do. Especially if you know you ain't got it. Especially if you know you don't have the experience, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the abilities. If you don't have the level. Because remember, there's levels to everything. If you're not on that level, then you need to shut up and take the lessons. If you're at this level, then let somebody at this level bring you up. All right? Because anything else, truth be told, anything else is you trying to bring them down. So, nonetheless, I've held on to this for a little while. Looks like it's been about 35, 36 minutes, so I'm gonna let it go. For anybody who may have tuned in tonight, I appreciate it. All right. You can catch me on YouTube at the 816 Fix, of course. And then also I am in Facebook, on Facebook at the 816 Fix. You can find me at either one of those. Anytime you want to chime in and say something, I'm open to all comments, questions, concerns. If you find something, if you have a subject that you'd like for me to speak on, feel free to drop me a message and tell me that. All right. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, join my group there at Facebook. Thank you for your time tonight, folks.